unacceptable. If you are minded to approve this application and the residents go to appeal, I would like to know how you're going to defend a decision like that when we already have an inspector saying real public parking in a residential area is unacceptable. Now, the applicant has stated that only local families will use the hall, and therefore the noise and the disturbance will not be anything to mention. I was not aware, and I do not believe it is possible to put a restriction on how many people can attend the church. Neither is it possible to police the closing of car doors or stopping people from talking. Any suggestion that this is possible is ludicrous. I also would like you to note that nobody can park in Oxford Road. Residents in Oxford Road have 2 to 3 cars. It's already clogged up. This is a residential area. Had it not been a church, but a garage or a shop applying, I would have said the same thing. It is not acceptable in a residential area to have anything that attracts members of the public. So I repeat what I said. Real public parking in a residential area is unacceptable. And I ask you to consider this very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that concludes, sorry, I do beg your pardon, Ian Douglas, the agent as well. My apologies. It's unusual to have this number of people speaking on our application. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to speak in support of this straightforward application to rebuild an existing community use building. I'd also like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the case officer on their fair and balanced appraisal in this report. Some of my colleagues are behind me. We've been searching for a site to use for a local gospel hall for approximately 7 years. So we're well aware of the implications of a local church in a residential area. We have hundreds of these throughout the UK, and I can assure the neighbours who've raised some fair concerns this evening that we will be considerate, and we do understand their concerns. But I'm sure, as seen in the application, we've listened to their concerns. The repositioning of the new build is to allow for off-street parking. We don't want to park on the street either. We've reduced the number of windows to help reduce noise. And some of the points that have been raised, obviously, in this report regarding noise and disturbance, page 22, points 20 and 21. Point 21 is very important to us as a community, and we would view very seriously any restrictions on use, particularly on Sunday mornings where we hold the Lord's Supper, Holy Communion. The suggested time of 5:30 does not allow us any time to prepare for that very important occasion for us. Also, as already pointed out on page 23, items 28 and 29, as already mentioned. One thing to consider is that we have carried out extensive cost analysis of refurbishing the existing building, and we can assure you that the refurbishment or a new build is pretty much cost negative. There's no cost advantage in rebuilding, so it's pretty much cost neutral, is what I meant to say. So what we believe in building a new room, it gives us the opportunity to enhance the environmental impact of this local hall, and also to reduce its size to improve the off-street parking, which we feel is very important to us too. Ladies and gentlemen, The question for tonight is not whether we allow community use on the site. That was established long ago. The question is simply whether there is any compelling reason not to allow replacement of a tiled and worn-out building with a sustainable, attractive, acoustically and thermally efficient replacement. Bearing in mind the presumption in favour of sustainable development, we hope this simple application can be readily approved, avoiding the need to make do with a less sustainable option of refurbishment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, now that does conclude those registered to speak, and we'll now come on to hear from the committee. Before we start, I think it's probably useful if I just summarise a few things.
The impact. If you look at terracing impact, one of the fundamental things that results in terracing impact is the space is the fact that you have two buildings which are very, very close together. They're of the same form and they look as if they're continuous, because essentially you've got two very different forms there and very.
But Mary, did you wish to comment? The thing that quite a lot of concern has been expressed about the cladding on the building. If the current use was retained and the application, the applicant would presumably be free to clad the building however they want without the benefit of any planning permission.
Right,
Correct. Chris Simmerton, come back please. I think normally the applicant is required to submit samples, I believe, and I guess if this was an approved application, the officers would recognise the concerns of the committee and local residents about cladding, and would no doubt try to negotiate with the applicant to have perhaps a more in keeping form of cladding or a reduced quantity of cladding. And condition 5 in the report does actually request that, should we be minded to do it. Okay. And Chris also asked about the weight you would apply to the impact on the streets in Clare. And would you attempt to answer that one? I appreciate a lot of these things are judgment.
That's right, Chairman, and it is a matter of judgment. In my view, which is before you, in the report, I think that it would be very, I accept that there is, this is not exactly got a domestic appearance, it's certainly got domestic scale, but the fenestration and the window detailing is not typical. But in my view, I think to refuse this on the basis of the impact of the street scene would be something which would be very difficult to
Thank you, Simon. I know you say on numerous occasions.
Press the grey buttons on the microphone. Unfortunately, the light doesn't seem to be working, but the sound is. What's the key?
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman and members. I speak to you on behalf of the applicant, Renaissance Retirement Limited. Wokingham's older people strategy identifies that there will be a significant increase in the number of older people in the borough over the next 15 years, particularly in the proportion of the very elderly. The Council's adopted core strategy identifies that there will be a need for an additional 100 sheltered housing units to provide for that need. Accordingly, core strategy policy CP2 encourages planning permission for this specialised form of housing development. Older people choose to move to sheltered housing, usually prompted by a life-changing event, such as death of a spouse, or for reasons of health, such as a fall or hip replacement or declining mobility. Many are downsizing from a family home, seeking companionship, safety and security, and avoiding the worry of home maintenance and repair. This also releases under-occupied housing suitable for families back onto the local market. Whilst it is usual for councils to restrict the age of occupancy by planning permission to a minimum age of 60 or 65, the typical characteristics of a sheltered resident is a single or widowed female in their late 70s or older. From our experience, at least 75% of the apartments are likely to be occupied by single-person female households. These factors, together with the communal facilities, the emergency call system, and the services of a visiting house manager and the associated management charges, tend to be less attractive to the more active car-owning elderly. It is for these reasons that we find that elderly residents of our sheltered accommodation display much lower car ownership than the general elderly population. Typically on a scheme of this nature, we expect to provide only one parking space for every 2 apartments for residents and their visitors. However,
Chris, from a highways perspective, could you just comment on the access?
The viability specifically is addressed on page 7 of the update sheet, just for members' attention. That sets out what would normally be required as part of this development. As just been explained, the viability,
Mr. Linsky from Woodley Town Council, good evening. Welcome. This is the first time you've spoken to a planning committee, is it?
Yes, it is.
Right, okay. We'll be gentle with you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. Okay. I hope that no council would approve any planning application that would blight a community that's expressed more than a passing concern over this application, and in support I'm going to add a further consideration. Everyone is fully aware, including the telecommunication industry, of the impact that 4G has on Freeview. Both have similar wavelengths. Pay-for-view services must be rubbing their hands with glee at the prospect of yet more properties blighted with no free-to-air signals. Not exactly fair when the government made it clear in the digital rollout that every household has a right to Freeview. Filters are only partially effective. Just ask the residents of Church Mews, Woodley. They also live in the shadow of the proposed development. They have intermittent television reception despite installing filters. What this planned upgrade will bring is more disruption, something that residents of North Swindon fought off successfully in October of this year. An application by Vodafone to roll out a further 3 4G masts was turned down by Swindon Borough Council, not only because of the visual impact on the community, but also that alternative solutions were not explored. The government planning portal provides useful guidance, in particular with reference to the environment. I'm going to quote something from that. It reads, redevelopment that would lead to poorer environmental solution. In the first instance, the guidelines recommend that the developer seeks to share an existing mast in the area to minimise the impact on the environment. Examining this application, I cannot see evidence of this having been done, or indeed any other solution explored. I know the mast already hosts 4G, and it would appear that another carrier wants to use the site to host their signals. Given that Vodafone is aware of the disruption caused by masts, especially in residential areas, it leaves me wondering why, in this case, Vodafone has not sought an alternative solution. So on behalf of Woodley Town Council, I'm asking the members and the officers to consider the impact on this further upgrade on the lives of the residents of St John's Close and indeed the neighbouring communities. Hopefully you will conclude this planning application is unnecessary, disruptive and intrusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I now invite Richard Beasley, who's objecting, I believe.
Is it acceptable to hand you a few
Yeah, of course.
photographs?
Don't mind them skipping one. Thanks.
It's 3 on each side.
First, we could clarify, are you speaking as a single objector or are you speaking on behalf of other residents?
I am speaking on behalf of residents. I speak on behalf of residents of St John's Close, the trustees of St John's Church, local residents of the surrounding area and 169 petition signatories. The new mast being 20 metres high will dominate our skyline. Along with the additional antennas, the mast will be clearly seen towering above St John's Church and add to what is already an imposing structure. Vodafone have used their squatters' rights to build by stealth from the original 12 metres to 15 metres up to the current 17 metres Surely it's time to put a stop to this incremental damage to the local environment. If this application referred to the installation of a new mast on this previously unused site, we would hope and presume that the council would reject it due to its proximity to the Woodley Green conservation area. The applicants themselves have said that the site is not suitable because of the tree line to the south interfering with coverage. Given that trees are likely to grow taller, does this mean that we have a larger mast sometime in the future? This is a golden opportunity to do the right thing to remove the mast from St John's Close and upgrade an existing mast on a less intrusive site, or even putting a new one in within one of the local industrial areas. We and those closest to the mast have been very disturbed by noise pollution emitting from the base station. Having to listen to this high-pitched pulsing noise at night time has an effect on residents' quality of sleep and health. With the alterations and more technology added, we fear even more noise pollution. Do we not have the right for a good night's sleep? The new 4G technology is used because it has a better building penetration. This along with the doubling of mobile phone traffic as companies share the mast is of great concern to the residents of St John's Close, and we are fearful of the possible health concerns. Vodafone have guidelines to check how close their masts are to local schools. This in itself shows uncertainty and doubt, but what about the children who sleep with the mast at the bottom of their garden, at the bottom of the garden of the close? This is very real worry to us. We accept that it is not the role of the planning officers or the councillors on the planning committees to consider the health risks, nor to consider the validity of health issues or their personal beliefs in those issues. However, it is their responsibility to consider the loss of amenity, which is a very valid planning issue, and it is clear that worrying and being fearful about the implications to one's health from mobile phone masts, especially if the mast is clearly visible from one's home, is going to affect the person's quality of life, thus leading to a loss of amenity. Irrespective of whether the danger is perceived or real, the proposal has already caused a considerable amount of anxiety, worry and stress. These ill effects will be intensified if the application were to go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I invite James Kane, the applicant?
Good evening, Chair. I am the agent for the applicant and I've read the officer's report and all objections. Your professional planning officer has produced a well-balanced report which takes account of all material considerations and results in a recommendation for approval. Your officer has done all in her power to ask questions of my client's technical team regarding the height, regarding whether the height could be reduced, whether the pole could be redesigned, what alternative sites have been explored, and also noise issues. In response, my client has provided coverage plots and technical reasons why the design proposed is the minimum that can achieve 4G coverage of the surrounding area. If there was a design of lesser impact that could have been found, then we would have put it forward. As your officer explained before, a smaller width of pole would fit in the GPDO right. This is a key upgrade site. At present, it only provides 3G coverage for Vodafone customers, so there's no existing 4G on the site. The scheme in front of you will allow enhanced 2G, 3G and 4G coverage for Vodafone and O2 customers. 4G cells are large and a constraint in this site is the tree cover to the south. In order to cover the full cell area and clear the trees to transmit without obstruction, a height increase is required. A substantial 4G coverage is expected in the area after the upgrade, which will lead to an increase in capacity. This is an established cell and congestion is highly likely if the proposed upgrade is not undertaken, which will continue with a poor connection for customers. There are no other existing sites in the search area for a site share for both Vodafone and Telefonica. Any alternative site should ideally be within 200 metres of the existing site to replicate its coverage, plus provide new 4G coverage. A standalone site could not be found due to the dense residential use in this area, and also no alternative rooftops in the search area could be found, which would enable the minimum height required to be achieved. Shrouding of the antennas is explored at the request of the case officer. Due to the large size of the proposed head frame, A shroud of that scale could not be designed to fit over the antennas, unfortunately. A redesign to a slimmer pole with shrouded antennas was explored. However, this would have resulted in a drop to less antennas. Since this is a high capacity site, this would cause capacity issues, resulting in coverage gaps and requiring a new site to soak up additional capacity requirements. Your conservation officer has no objection to the proposal, and the site is outside of the conservation area in any event. Therefore, we are of the opinion that the following points should be considered in your planning judgment. 1, this is an established cell since 1991. 2, the upgrade will enable better coverage and capacity. 3, the height increase is only 2.7 metres, which should be considered reasonable in this instance. 4, that views to and from the conservation area are well screened by trees. 5, that this proposal is wholly compliant with planning policy. It is a site share and will support economic growth and social cohesion in the area. Nearly there. This proposal will mean that a second...
Got slightly wrong. So residents believe, and I believe, that 4G is already on there. For me, the key issue... Sorry.
I think we actually heard from the agent that it does already have 4G on the mast. Is that correct?
No, no 4G, no.
So there's something going wrong here.
Okay, right.
For me, the key issue is the visual impact. As you saw on one of the slides, by the very fact that this application is before you, is a clear indication within the planning process that such an upgrade can have a serious impact on surrounding residents. If it did not, then it would have come under the classification of permitted development.
Which level of the St John's ambulance and below?
So they probably wouldn't really see most of that. It's the higher one.
The nature of the mast, by its very nature, it's a slightly tapering shape towards the top.
Visual acuity changes based on the distance.
Michelle, use the mic.
Sorry. Visual acuity changes on the distance, so that most likely they would not be able to actually...
Should be seen in the context of the whole of the building. And I'd urge you to look at the plan P4, which is on page 93 of the agenda. When viewed in this context, the extension actually has very little visual effect from any public vantage point and could not, by any reasonable judgment, be considered to be harmful to the wider landscape or the setting of settlements. As such, I suggest it would not offend.
Well, considering what problems we've had even today trying to get affordable homes for people, I think that having a home and having the ability to expand your home to the point to have all your family there is a good idea. And I think this should be overturned, and I think it should be allowed personally.
John and then Chris.
I would concur that I think it's the best use of that.
By the presence of a large number of TPO trees on the site, which did have a significant factor on it. This is not a constraint that we face with here. So anyway, so members, we have a proposal in front of us. Does anyone wish to make an alternative proposal?
I propose that we accept the application as it is in front of us.
And I second that.
I'll second that.
In a second, if I will. We'll put that to the vote. And if this was a successful proposal, clearly we will need to set some conditions. How will we go about doing that there?
So we do one.
Of course, suggest the conditions with me if you want to look over.
Ah, right, okay.
Do you want to just outline what they're related to?
So it would be a standard...
Sorry, members, this requires your attention. Sorry.
Standard full permissions, 3 years.
Okay. And I would assume that as the immediate and only neighbour is supporting the application, I suspect there wouldn't be a need to have a restriction on working hours, because I got the impression that the neighbours would cooperate on such a matter to avoid inconvenience. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we need some specific wording for this, Clare. Could you help us with that?
Sorry, Chairman, I missed what you asked me.
I think we need to have a reasons for
Yes.
approval, just as we would have reasons
Absolutely.
for approval. Could you suggest something?
Chairman, I think yes, through. So I think what members are saying.
Sorry.
The reason for refusal put forward, Chairman, in the officer's report is one of the countryside reasons in terms of the scale, form and footprint and the impact of that on the open countryside. I think members have clearly said that they don't feel that or some members have demonstrated, have said that they don't feel that there is sufficient harm given the location which is bound by the motorway, given the fact that there is no through route